But at the same time, as I mentioned, it is a construct of the societal relations which have a dimensional measure of development. So societal relations, they are seen to structure, restructure, or produce the space. For example, when you say that you are seeing today the you can say the farmers, they seem to have won through their continuous 1 year of uh, of the movement which they have rallied on the borders of Delhi. Now, what was the space for them? It was about the commodity prices. It was the prices of grain which they are producing and about which they are talking, and the rules and laws which are made that created, that structured the space of agriculture in our country, and for which reason, which was not acceptable to the farmers, and so they have protested. And therefore, under whatever is the pressure which Modi has faced, with Prime Minister Modi has faced, these rules at present have been withdrawn. These have been withdrawn. And so another space has been made. Now there is a requirement that the MS price, that is the minimum price of the grain, this is to be assured to the farmers. So this is the space I'm talking about, that how it is related space. And that needs to be understood while unfolding the situation of COVID-19 as well. So you have relative and relational space. Now all these spaces are hierarchically structured. What do we mean by hierarchy? It is not just ranking from top to bottom. It is also on the basis of the power. It is also on the basis of the control which runs through these links through which these structures are coordinated. These structures are linked with each other through several flows. And therefore, we understand that how COVID has passed from one country to another country through maybe the travelers, the tourists, or the business people, so many people, the students, whoever has traveled. But at the same time, it has also spread through the institutions, through the hospitals, through our, you can say, exchanging our shoulders, I mean, walking shoulder to shoulder in our markets, so many things. And therefore, we find that hierarchy from global to local needs to be put forth when you are understanding the phenomena of COVID. And then finally, we have to talk about the space society interface, which refers to the marginalized spaces of health and the social well-being characteristic of the people. And at the same time, we have to understand what are the therapeutic spaces of the given disease or COVID-19. How much is the therapy? How much is the, you can say, the healthcare measures are available, are accessible? How many of these are organized by the given economies and the societies? That will help us to understand the patterns, the you can say the flows, at the same time the gaps in the availability of, I mean, in the social well-being of the people in terms of combating COVID-19. Now here is a just for your simplest understanding, I can ask you to concentrate on this diagram, which talks about several localities, local 1, local 2, local 3, like that, and different time periods in which these locales have experienced the given phenomena. So COVID-19, which is experienced, say, now in 2020 and 21, and the Spanish flu, which was experienced in 1918 and 1919, or the entire, you can say, HIV, which has become rampant from, say, 70s onwards, 60s to 70s onwards, and till now, it is ongoing, a kind of a pandemic. At the same time, we find that there have been several diseases which are having their temporal phases. So one can think about these time, you can say, slices of time, which are also contextualized in different countries, in different parts of those countries, or in different smaller areas. So locale, we are talking about locale. Now this combination of time and locales, this gets affected by the processes which are running on it. And these processes refer to the structure. It refers to the institution. It refers to the agency. By structure, I mean, suppose the state is the structure. Our constitution is the structure. Whereas the ministry, the government and its, you can say, machinery, that becomes the institution. Family is the structure, caste or religion is the structure, but its various, you can say, agencies are there, institutions are there, through which we find that the structure, it comes to the people. And therefore that there are agents, there are people who are doing it, or there are agencies which are doing it. So you are having professionals like us teachers, you have doctors, you have nurses, who are called the COVID warriors, and you are having so many other types of, you can say, the researchers who are working in the laboratories, who are also, you can say, the decision makers who are taking decisions at various levels. So we are having this conceived as the process. So space comprises of these elements. Besides that, you have to think about that whole thing is getting operationalized at these locales across the time at different levels. So you can think about what is happening at global level. You can think about what is happening at the meso level. So you can talk about the South Asian scenario, or you can talk about the European scenario, within that West European scenario, how West European countries are affected because of COVID, the maximum. And at micro level, we can talk about what has happened to Dharavi, the biggest slum in Mumbai, or what has happened to, say, the city of Malegaon, or what has happened to the northeast area of our country, Guwahati, and the small pockets in Guwahati, or in Srinagar, or in Rajasthan. So we find that you can talk about the micro level, you can talk about the meso level, and you can talk about macro level. And this provides you a kind of a hierarchical structure as well, if these are bound together by the relations, the flows of commodities, services, decisions, capital, technology, and the researches, etc. Knowledge, of course, knowledge becomes also a very important factor by which people are governed. So this takes us to the next slide. I'm not going to explain to you that how one can think about this approach. There are two approaches. Very recently, I think you have been exposed to approach of GIS, means GIS using it as a technology. One has to remember that it is a technology. It is not conceptual idea. One requires conceptual idea if you have to use even the technology. Now, this spatial perspective, now Greta's speech, this slide I had used to explain the climate phenomenon, climate change phenomena. And there I had used this concept as well, that there are structures and there are institutions and human agents. I will not deal more on that. Now, what is our understanding about the developed countries at present, or the less developed countries at present? That is, it is indicating that we, more or less, the geography of health, social geography, for that matter, geography of development, special dimensions of development, this had this connotation, this had this theorization that, well, the less developed countries, in less developed countries, we find that the healthcare services are relatively less accessible to majority of the people. And at the same time, they are also highly centralized. So there were various types of works which were done, that why this centralization has taken place. So it comes to urbanization, it comes to metropolitanization and concentration of the facilities in the metropolitan economies, which we are experiencing even now. We are experiencing that when it comes to COVID-19 and we have to deal with digital, you can say, dissemination of knowledge and run our lectures, and the schools are to be run in this way, then access to technology, access to smartphones, access to, you can say, possibility of having you must be able to catch up the signals, you must be able to operate those smartphones. So all those facilities are not evenly distributed, and therefore we find that centralization becomes one of the aspects which one needs to understand. But merely recognizing centralization is not enough. One has to think about why has it occurred. So how the colonization process, how the neo-colonization process, this has structured this space and created the gaps in availability, in access to the health facilities, or for that matter social well-being. So we find that Harvey argued here in this context that the more affluent classes in the society, they organize themselves through political system, they develop their clouds, they develop their control, and they try to maximize the real income. That's why we find that here, even though large proportion of the workers, large proportion of the majority of the population of in India, they have experienced a fall in their income, yet a large number, but I mean a very few people, they have tried to gain actually through this. And that's why we find that these types of write-ups, these are there, that everybody likes the drought. Similarly, Sainath wrote this very well-known book that everybody likes drought because all of them, they benefit by drought. So similarly, everybody likes pandemic, one can say, because there are sections who have immensely gained in this, whereas a large proportion, at the cost of large proportion of the population. And Harvey is talking about that. In the process of allocation of various facilities, health facilities, we find that the approach like, what is the need? What is the demand? Now many times you find that the policies, they react and they are more, you can say, favorable to organize, to enact on the basis of demand based scenarios, whereas need based structures, need based policies, need based actions, these are lacking. Even today we find that the similar scenario is found when we are finding about the about the how we are dealing with the post COVID situation. So the ongoing incidence of COVID-19 and its myriad complex implications need to be examined, analyzed, and explained in the light of this perspective. This is my, I should say, the thread, the main thought which I would like to share with you. Now, this needs to be corroborated. And there are several corroborations which say that, yes, this is correct. But at the same time, the reality has shown that there are various paradoxical observations as well, which require discussions, which require why these paradoxes are there, and which require theorization. I'll come to those paradoxes soon. Now here, these are some to make my presentation bit lighter. One can recall that how this has happened in China in early December of 2019, and then there was spread to the nearby countries, and then it came from there to Italy, then to the United States of America, then large number of European countries, of course, West European countries were affected, South America as well. Then Russia was another larger country which was affected by it, and of course, India and Asian countries. Africa, relatively, even in the first phase, this received a relatively lesser impact, for which reason I have kept it a smaller, you can say, diagrammatic representation. Now, it was UNCTAD which defined it as the global health crisis, and which was the greatest challenge which the world economy has faced after the Second World War. That was the understanding when it hit us. Now, remember that this COVID-19 is not the only, as I mentioned in the beginning, that earlier the human civilization has faced several types of pandemics and epidemics, and the earliest goes down to 1346 to 1353 before Christ. And a large section, Europe, Asia, North Africa, the known world at that time, or the old world at that time as it was called, this accounted for. Now, this is the, of course, from different records, this value is obtained, that 75 to 200 millions of death which talked about, which referred to about 17 to 54% of the then global population, etc. The second most lethal affecting the human civilization was Spanish flu. Now remember, it was a Spanish flu not because it started in Spain. It actually started in United States of America.